What is the current state of climate science today? For example, what did the NIPCC conclude after reviewing the peer-reviewed literature?
That the climate has always been changing, warming and cooling, and warming and cooling for millions and millions of years, long before humans ever came to this planet, and certainly long before the Industrial Revolution. So we assume that this is a continuing process. The fact that we're now fairly well advanced in the Industrial Revolution has no influence on natural forcing. We don't affect what the sun does. We don't affect the volcanoes. So the null hypothesis, which means the normal way events go, we would assume that all changes of climate, even today, are due to the same kinds of forcings, natural forcings, that existed millions of years ago. However, we're quite open to the idea that maybe CO2 does have some influence, but it has to be demonstrated. So far, they have not been able to demonstrate uniquely, to our satisfaction, that CO2 has any measurable influence. In my own personal view, I think it must have some kind of a role, because it is a greenhouse gas and it is increasing in the atmosphere. But for various reasons, the atmosphere is very complicated. The effects could be extremely small and virtually undetectable. In that case, it has no practical significance. If effects are too small to measure, then they're too small to have any influence, any political influence. But this doesn't seem to bother the IPCC or the UN. They continue to propagate the idea that you have to control CO2. Now, control of CO2 means essentially control of energy, and that means control of economies. So it's a matter of really trying to control things, I think, more than anything else. Money is involved in various ways. First of all, each government pays large sums of money to its scientific fellows, and essentially it buys their cooperation. Plus there's a large industry now trying to substitute or produce energy to replace fossil fuels, but they're not doing very well. Both solar and wind are unreliable, intermittent, and expensive. I doubt whether you can replace fossil fuels. The only thing I see on the horizon is nuclear energy, which I think is the ultimate energy source that mankind will use. Because, after all, nuclear goes on forever.
You mentioned that the burden of proof is on the alarmists, and the alarmists would say, well, the burden of proof is on the skeptics because we need to save the world, and if we don't do something now, we're all doomed. Why do you think the burden of proof should be on the alarmists?
Well, as I explained, this is simply a matter of logic. The null hypothesis, which has to be disproven or amended, is that natural forcings are changing the climate, simply because it's always been that way, and we would assume it will continue that way. So the burden of proof definitely has to be on the side of the people who want to control CO2. Honestly, I will tell you that they have a very difficult job. I don't want that job of having to prove that. Yeah. I forgot to mention one thing, and that is, in addition to the scientists and to the uh, energy sources which some hope will replace fossil fuels like solar and wind. There's the matter of paying money to less developed countries. This is a direct subsidy to, frankly, kleptocracies. We know what happens to that money. It goes into the pockets or bank accounts of the people who run these countries. It's been happening all the time, and I think it'll continue to happen. So, as someone put it, it's a matter of the poor in the rich countries supporting the rich in the poor countries.